All right, party people, let's talk about one of my favorite topics that I leveraged, favorite tools that I leveraged in order to fast track my wealth. It is a tool called rent vesting. Now, this is not a tool that I'm saying you have to do forever. It is just a tool to implement at the start of building wealth to help fast track you. That's it. It's not for everyone, but the point of this is for me to show you what are the real tangible upsides and pros and cons to rent vesting. So first of all, what is rent vesting? Let's go through that. Rent vesting is basically where you personally, wherever you live, you rent, and then you put your money wherever it makes sense to do so from an investing perspective. All right. So it's where you live where you want, and therefore you're able to pay less over time. So if you want a lifestyle of living near the water, or you want to live near a city somewhere that costs $1 million, or somewhere where you can't afford, this is really ideal for those type of people. Now, for most people starting out, this would make sense. For a lot of new people, this might not make sense. If you're 50 years of age and you've only got $200,000 left on your mortgage, it might not be the thing. Or maybe that would be the thing because it would give you more income, so therefore it would help your borrowing capacity, help you get out of a shit situation. So we really need to leverage this and help understand by asking the brokers on your team different questions and scenarios to see if it would help you get out of a sticky situation. So it's not a tool that everyone needs to use, by the way. It is just a tool for a lot of people to start off to help fast track and build wealth quicker. That's all. So let's go into all the pros and cons. I'll just be looking over here at my other screen that I've written down. So cost of maintaining the property. So when you move out of a house, and say, for example, you then live next door, all of a sudden you can start claiming stuff because it's deemed an investment. So you can start claiming stuff that you were already paying, but now it's deemed as a tax deduction. So for example, the interest repayments on the mortgage now become tax deductible. The depreciation is literally, oh my fucking God, one of the most beautiful words because it's free money. If you don't know what depreciation is, comment the word depreciation on here and I'll get my team to send you a video on depreciation, which is literally free money. And all of the maintenance costs, right? So even if when you own that home and even if you live in it, there's still going to be things that are going to break over time that you have to fix, right? If you don't live in that house, right, all of those things, so for example, an aircon breaks or the toilet needs replacing or the hot water system needs replacing. Those are some big things, right? When those things break, you can actually claim them at tax time. What does that equal for you? Physical more money back in your pocket each tax time. And then I haven't actually even mentioned it on here, but you can also get a tax variation. So this is pretty cool. So tax variations is where you can ask the ATO, you go to your accountant to do this. You can say, hey, tax man, thanks so much for giving me all of these extra tax deductions for being able to claim these things. Can I now please, rather than you giving it to me as extra money as a lump sum at the end of the year, can you please give it to me divided over each month in advance, which is really fucking cool. So it's a good way to make cash flow a bit easier on you as well throughout different storms in real estate building. For example, when interest rates are high, it's a really cool tool that I get some of my clients to implement. Okay, so now this has a second benefit. So two birds with one stone. So because they're tax deductible, now your broker, come lending time, they favor this. So they can use this extra money that you got from tax deductions and that can be added back on to your borrowing capacity. So for example, you might get $10,000 or $20,000. I remember when I bought my first house and I didn't live in it. And I tell this story all the time. And my mother-in-law was so confused. She's like, I said, we're not going to go and live in it. She's like, why? I don't get it. I said, because it's $20,000 cheaper per year for me to not live in it, for me to rent it out. And that was purely because of the maintenance costs and the depreciation. So all of those things combined made it $20,000 cheaper for me to not live in it. So all of that extra $20,000 can be added back on to your borrowing capacity as if it was income, right? And at the moment, with interest rates where they are at the moment, income is usually 5 times your borrowing capacity is usually 5 times your income. So I just did a calculation. In my scenario back then, when I was going to get an extra $20,000 per year, 20 times 5, that's an extra $100,000 of borrowing capacity that could be added on. See, so it can make a big difference to your borrowing capacity, which is huge and which is what a lot of people need when they're starting to build out their portfolio. And so I look at this as like, that is a massive, these two are massive upsides. Okay, to the point of this is income actually has a greater weight than paying off debt as well. So what I mean by this, to my point, you could be only saving, say, $5,000 a year. Let's just say it's actually $5,000 a year cheaper to live in your house, but because of the income it could potentially generate, because of the tax deductions, it could actually have a greater weight and lift your borrowing capacity even more. So you could go and rent somewhere else where it's a little bit more expensive than your mortgage repayments. And so you're probably thinking, what the fuck? How does it lift my borrowing capacity? Because of the deductions that the bank sees it as a business. And they're like, okay, here's more borrowing capacity. How fucking cool is that? All right, income has a greater weight. Just remember that. Now, this is my favorite thing right now because this is truly for me and this has impacted my life. And I'm so fucking grateful that I did rent vesting because now it's really, really, really rewarding me. This is what I mean. So when the banks go to judge you on paper, when it comes to rent, guess what? They can cap it. So there are a lot of lenders out there at the moment who will cap your rent at $30,000 per year. So even though I could be renting something for something extreme, like the rent might cost me 90 grand a year, but I don't need to tell the bank that. I could actually tell the bank, we can just cap it and say, yep, it's just the average 30,000. I'm not even shitting you. So therefore I could be renting something extreme, right? Which would be so fucking expensive and stupid for me to buy. But if I bought, I'm going to use an example. Say, for example, you wanted to buy a house, you wanted to live in a house and it was a $3 million house. So it would cost you $3 million to buy. The bank is going to assess your borrowing capacity based on the repayments of that $3 million. However, if you were to go and rent the same house, not only would you rent the house instead of buying it, not only would you get the not have to pay for all the maintenance and the upkeep for something like that. Let's just say it's, on the water with a pool and the rent was like $100,000 a year. You could claim all of those. You don't have to pay for the maintenance things of those things either. Like you don't have to pay for the maintenance of like the pool getting fixed and all the things being broken because it's much bigger and it's much nicer. And we all know that more, it might be even a new house, for example, and it's more modern. And if it's more modern, then we know what things are like when they're built these days. They're not built like how they used to be. So there can be more ongoing maintenance problems, right? So you don't have to deal with that as a headache, right? Same thing as I've got people who really like living in apartments in the city who have all the extreme, cool, nice, fancy stuff. Like they've got a private garden and barbecues and they've got an in-house gym and all of that sort of stuff, right? Some people desire those things. So point being is the rent can be capped, which allows you to live a more luxurious lifestyle than what you might not be able to afford to do. That's fucking cool, man, right? I'm just giving you a hint here of somebody who might be living that life, right? So the next thing is you're not locked into one location. The cool thing is you can have the flexibility. So many people come to me and they bought this home because they thought they wanted to live there. 3 to 5 years later, they're like, oh, we only found it out this other suburb. We'd love to live there. But now they have to pray and hold that the property that they did buy went up enough in value. Or they feel locked in, like they feel like they have to live there for another 10 years for it to see capital growth because they were emotional at buying it in the first place and it wasn't a good location. So that's onto my second point, which means you get to focus on location and buying in areas where you're not emotionally attached to wanting to live or see or feel as well. It also reduces the amount that you spend on upgrading on the property. Do you know how emotionally attached people are because they live in it? They're like, oh, just going to spend this $3,000 on doing the landscaping, or I fucking really want to renovate this bathroom. It's going to cost me $20,000, right? Imagine if you didn't live in it. You're less likely to be emotional and want to renovate the property because it's not your property and spend stuff on it as well. So if you're a mortgage owner right now, you have a home, and the home is over $400,000, you have at least $400,000 mortgage or more, or the home is less than 20 years of age, it might financially be really advantageous for you to just rent it out short term. Hey, and it might be a thing to get you, for some people, to get them out of a sticky situation. And it might only be for like 12 months as well, right? For some people who come to with no borrowing capacity, but they're willing to go and rent somewhere else just short term and rent their home out for 12 months. That could be the thing that is a deal or no deal, like a complete thing that fast tracks their wealth. I have a single mum at the moment. She owns a home, has $300,000 owing on a mortgage. She can rent the place out for about $800 a week, which is great. She's personally going to just go sacrifice, and her borrowing capacity is really fucked. Like, it's like $300,000, and we really need it to get up to around the $500,000 mark. So what she's going to do is go rent herself personally for $500 a week, but she's going to rent this out for $800 a week. That rent is going to make a huge difference on her borrowing capacity, which is going to lift her borrowing capacity up above $600,000, including some depreciation. It's also a fairly new building. It's under 20 years of age, so she's going to get some good depreciation in that meantime. And what that'll mean is that'll enable her to pull out enough equity to buy a real fucking turbo boost property. And we're going to utilize that turbo boost property. So she's going to hold on to it just to acquire it. And then she can go back in and move back into a home after 12 months. So just enough to acquire that property. Then she's going to hold on to that one property just for 5 years. It will grow enough in capital growth, we'll sell it off. And then within 5 years, that one property is then going to pay off her home, get rid of a mortgage overnight, right? Now, that's quite a chessboard type of move, right? It's just quite a strategic move. But I've implemented this for her because this client's job, she's a single mum, this client's goal is purely just to get rid of the debt on her mortgage. And she still has 25 years left on her mortgage. So rather than her paying off the $300,000 over 25 years, she's going to use this other property over here to pay it off in 5 years. Isn't 5 years paying off your mortgage better than 25 years? Well, she's using rent vesting as a tool to help alleviate that, to get the borrowing capacity to be able to afford this other investment property, which is going to turbo boost her. So there you go. It's an interesting one. Now, something else a lot of people worry about is that they think that they're going to move every 12 months. It's not a thing. It's very, very rare. On average, renters stay in their properties for an average of 6.7 years. I've just put 6 here to be conservative. So it's likely that you have the opportunity to stay. Like hell, I'm a rent investor and I have been for the last 10 years of my investing portfolio. There's one period of my short window of my life where I did move into my 5th property that I bought and I fucked my borrowing capacity and I moved out. What was I going to say? So yeah, it is. One of the properties I lived in, I stayed there for 3 years and I could have kept staying there, but I didn't. I decided to upgrade my lifestyle because I could afford to, because I did the sacrifices and built a portfolio that was now funding my rent. Okay, so people also say that it's harder to find rents and get approval. Yes, it is for the average Australian who has no fucking idea about this sort of stuff, right? It is much harder for the lower level income people. I agree, yes. But you have an advantage being a rent investor. You know why? Because the first thing that you can do to get your approval or to look better and stand out is you say, I'm a property investor. So guess what? You hand them your rental income statements, right? They don't even look at your mortgages. You could even have no job at all, no income, but you could have, no actual job or business job that you're physically earning, but you could just literally show them an income statement from one investment property and they'll take that as enough as an income. You say, this is my income, this is what I look at. And they don't ask for bank, like mortgages. They don't ask to see what the debt is. So it could look like you own this entire property, it's completely cash flowing. How fucking cool is that, right? So for me, when I go into inspections and open houses, I say, first of all, the way to get in the door, by the way, is it's how you make them feel. Okay? You've got to stand out by making them feel. And then you just say, yeah, look, I'm a property investor. I own 2 or 3 investment properties, so I just live off that income. I'll just send you my rental income statements. What's the best place for me to send it to? And I tell you what, there's zero competition. Every property that I've rented, I've gotten straight away. With every property that I've put in an application for, I've never had to put in multiple applications. I'm not in, even since 2020, since about 2021, when the rental crisis got really bad, right? I've moved house 3 times during that period. And all 3 times I have gotten the property straight away, one application, exact property that I've wanted without having to apply for any. So I've got approved straight away simply by me looking like I'm an authority, because I look more sophisticated because I'm an investor, right? So you stand out. And the other massive bonus, which is what I like and a lot of millennials like too, is life is about exploring. So you can explore your own country and your own cities just by simply moving around to different areas. So I really, really like that. For me, life's short. One of my forms of traveling is by the location of where I live. So I really like that as an extra added bonus. And when it comes to moving out, I look at it as an upgrade. So every time if I was forced to move out, I go, right, I'm going to reward myself here and I'm going to go fucking go and upgrade this house for myself as a reward for me. So what are the cons and the downsides? Obviously, having your property managers come in and do checks on you every couple of months, all right? Or every 3 or 6 months, depending on the state that you're in. Is it annoying? Sure it is, but whatever. I mean, fuck, I have strangers come over all the time anyway, so why not? You can't do what you want to the property. It's probably more or less a good thing. You might need to move every 12 months. Again, that's a possibility, but is it real? And a lot of parents might say, oh, I don't want to move my kids around. Why? Is it your trauma that you believe that you need to stay in that one location because you moved around? I know a few of those people. They moved around a lot because of their parents' work, and they think that their home and having the same 4 walls is the most important thing. I mean, parental advice here, but also just to let you know, the number one way for raising children is love, right? I just think it's a trauma that's just kind of made up in most people's head. Anyway, you might also have to wait 10 to 15 years potentially to build out the capital to buy your dream home, if that's the decision that you want to make. Now, for context as well, just to let you know, I do truly believe, and this is a belief system of mine, that eventually we should all aim to own our own home, right? I don't think you're going to want to be 70 years of age and potentially be kicked out of a rental. Is that going to be nice? No. So you probably want the stability of that when you get older. But whilst you're younger, like under the age of 40, you leverage this as a tool to help fast track your wealth for sure. What are some downsides? You've got some cleaning fees, right? So you might have to, every 12 months, cater for a $700 cleaning fee. That's pretty expensive. Plus a $1,400 move. I think the last one I did just in 2024 was $1,200 for me to remove, to hire a whole entire truck and a furniture removalist to move everything end to end. You also want to make sure that you have a $5,000 minimum buffer for bond, right? Because you might, again, have to unexpectedly move. So you need to make sure that you have just a buffer there, which if you're a property investor anyway, you should naturally already have those sort of buffers there for your investment properties. And it is absolutely true that, yeah, your rents can go up. But guess what? As long as the portfolio that you've been growing is exceeding the rent, then you're still up. So for example, let's just say, for example, my rent goes up where I live by $100 a week, right? For that year. So 12 months has passed, my rent's going up $100 a week. But I might have over here, for example, 5 properties where this one's going up $50 a week, that one's going up 100, that one's going up $20 a week, that one's going up by 30, so on and so forth. Then you're still up, right? And again, it's just a tool to fast track your wealth. Now, while we all can, even though financially, on paper, rent vesting absolutely makes financial sense, 80 to 90% of the time, it absolutely does for the majority of people. But then why don't we know this? Why isn't this common knowledge? So the reason why we don't know this is because we were sold this as the great Australian dream, which actually originated from the American banks, which said it's the great American dream to own your own home. That's who's indoctrinated us to believe that. And then in the early 2000s, mortgage brokers started to come out of the woodworks, and there was this famous mortgage broker, Aussie Home Loans, who came out with this slogan that became a very catchy slogan, which is rent money's dead money. That's not true. Not if you're placing your money somewhere else where it's going to make, where it's going to compound more, make more money, essentially. And this is where, from a rent investing perspective, this is where the famous quote from Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone came from. It initially came from Robert Kiyosaki, which is, your home is not an asset to you. It is true. Your home does not, because the definition of an asset is something that produces income. Your home doesn't produce income. So this did become quite a fad probably in the last 10 years or so, thanks to Robert Kiyosaki mentioning it, and then Grant Cardone sort of pushing it as well, which are really famous people in the property investing world. They're Americanized. So whilst you can put down your home on paper in the asset column, that is an asset to the bank because they can take it from you if you don't cough up your money, but to you it's technically not. Now, something else that's quite personal to me, being an active rent investor, is moving into each area. I kind of stumbled over it before, but it's like a new holiday. It's like literally discovering a whole new city by moving into a suburb, because all of a sudden you get to really know that suburb much more on a deeper level, because you get to really get to know the cafes and the restaurants and the local parks and all of the cool stuff that make up an area or a suburb. If you hadn't have lived in there, you probably wouldn't have got to know it a lot. So I really like it from an exploration perspective, and I treat it like a new holiday. So every time we are in a new area, for my partner and I, it takes us we've worked it out, it roughly takes us about 12 months just to really get to know all the cool hidden secret spots about that particular area, right? And then by year 2, we start getting itchy feet. We're like, okay, we want to move on now. We're getting a bit comfortable in this area. Now, this one's an emotional downside, which I see happen way too often, is that most people end up buying their home based off affordability rather than desirability, meaning they're financially restricted to buying where they want. So they end up buying a home based on what their financial means are, and then they don't actually enjoy being there, being in that street or being in that area as much. But imagine if you could be a rent investor. Like, for example, me right now. There's no way known where I rent right now. There's no fucking way known that it would make financial sense for me to buy this house where I'm living right now. I would absolutely be shooting myself in the foot. So you just need to make sure that you kind of get what you want, because if you're going to end up buying a house based on affordability, you never really got or are going to get what you want anyway, right? Now, let's also talk about meeting other people in the area that you might not have met had you not lived in that particular area. So this is quite critical for business owners. So if you're a business owner watching this is probably even more important for you as well, right? So you might be able to meet other like-minded people. For example, an area that I've just recently moved into, I intentionally moved into this suburb so I could meet older, successful people. So I live in a suburb now that is known as like the retirement suburb. It's all old people. I don't think there's a single person in my suburb under the age of 50. I literally go to my local supermarket and everyone's in walking frames. I'm not even joking you. They're that old in my area. It's like there's not a single old person in Queensland anywhere else than this one suburb, and that's where I live. But I intentionally have lived here to move to be closer to my mentor so I can see him, hang out with his friends, get to know them and learn from them. And ironically enough, I also get a lot of business out of it as well. So you have to think about how that could impact your life, right? For example, I have some friends that are also clients that live in Melbourne, and they wanted to invest in properties, but they wanted to live in Toorak. Now, Toorak is a very up-and-coming, expensive area, right? The minimum for a bloody house in there, I think, is fucking like $3 million. But they couldn't afford that to buy that house, but I could absolutely afford to rent an apartment there. And that was really, really critical for both their kids to be around the school and the affluence of the schools in that area, as well as their businesses as well, that enabled them to be closer to the city, which also helped boost their business in terms of the having like-minded people in the area as well. Also, it's good to consider if you're choosing to buy in an area based on affordability, you also need to, if you are a parent, you might want to consider thinking about the impact it has on your children in terms of their affluence of what they are surrounded by as well. So if you're forced to only buy in an area that is in the lower socioeconomical sort of suburb, I'll give you an example, like in Queensland and Logan, right? Imagine if you could only afford there to buy there, but then you could afford to rent in a more affluent area, which could again impact the raising of your children perhaps, or their influence around them. So what do you need to do next? A couple of things to think about and to ponder about is go and start scenario building with your broker. So, and you're going to need a really good investment broker to play ball on these scenarios. So what I would recommend doing is you need to grab some numbers first for the broker. So first of all, you need to find out what, if you do already have a home or a PPR that you live in, you need to find out what you could rent that for. So go get a couple of quotes from some real estate agents. Then you also need to figure out, if you were to rent somewhere else, what would your rent be that you would pay? Then you give those two numbers to your broker and say, hey broker, if I was to buy this property or continue living in this home that I own, my PPR, then how much would my borrowing capacity be? Can you also tell me if I was to move out of it, or if I was to not move into this PPR and not buy this, then what would my borrowing capacity be if I then rented it out for this and then I went and rented personally for this? So one of the key roles that I play as a property coach is helping people build out scenarios and asking high quality questions for my clients to work with all of their team members, such as brokers, accountants, and whatnot. So if you need help on this front, please click the link in my bio to book in a free 15-minute call if we're not already in contact. And that way we can just start planning and ideating. That's all. Doesn't mean you're making a decision. And then if you end up changing your mind, like you move out, you do the rent vesting thing for 6 or 12 months, you've locked someone else in, guess what? It's only 12 months. You can move back in. Your life's not going to end. All right. I hope this was of value for you. Please leave a comment below. If you like this, give me a thumbs up.